In a modest garage on the outskirts of town, Marcus Townsend works miracles with machines others have given up on. At 52, he's a single father who can barely make rent, but his hands speak the language of engines like poetry. When a pristine Ferrari F40, one of only 400 ever made, rolls into his shop on a flatbed, he knows this could change everything. Every elite mechanic in the city has failed to revive it. The owner, Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovations, watches skeptically as Marcus works through the night, his weathered hands dancing across the engine. By dawn, the impossible happens. The Ferrari roars to life. But instead of writing, "A check," Victoria asks a question that leaves Marcus stunned. Could this be the beginning of something far more valuable than any repair job? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn sunrise painted long shadows across Marcus Townsend's workbench as he traced his fingers over the worn leather of his wallet. Inside, beneath a scratched plastic sleeve, a faded photograph showed a younger version of himself with Sarah, his late wife, her smile as radiant as ever. Beside them stood their daughter Emma, then just 6, clutching a toy wrench with the same determination she now showed with real tools at 16. "Dad, you're doing it again," Emma's voice carried through the garage, accompanied by the familiar squeak of the side door. She wore her mother's old denim jacket, now adorned with patches from various engineering competitions. Remembering won't pay the bills. Marcus tucked the wallet away, managing a smile. Someone's up early. Someone never went to sleep. Emma set 2 coffee cups on the workbench, the aroma of French roast filling the space. "I was finishing my robotics project. Mrs. Henderson thinks it could win state this year. You should be sleeping, not building robots at dawn," Marcus said. But pride crept into his voice despite his paternal concern. Emma had inherited her mother's brilliance and his stubborn dedication to fixing things. Sometimes he wondered if she was raising herself more than he was raising her. The morning light streamed through the garage's dusty windows, illuminating decades of accumulated tools and memories. Every surface told a story. The dented toolbox his father had given him on his 16th birthday, the wall of specialized wrenches he'd collected over 30 years of working on everything from lawn mowers to luxury cars, the small shelf of engineering textbooks Emma had started collecting. Bills came in. Emma pulled a stack of envelopes from her backpack, each one marked with increasingly urgent red stamps. Mr. Patterson called again about the rent. Marcus took a long sip of coffee, buying time before responding. "We'll figure it out, we always do. That's what you said last month." Emma's tone was gentle but firm, so much like her mother's. It made his chest ache. "And the month before that. Maybe if you actually charge people what you're worth." "I charge what's fair," Marcus interrupted, more sharply than he intended. He softened his voice. "Besides, most of our customers can barely afford that." The truth was, Marcus couldn't bring himself to turn away anyone who needed help, even when they couldn't pay full price. Old Mrs. Wilson's ancient Volvo, Mr. Lee's delivery van that kept his restaurant business running, the beat-up Honda that young Tommy used to drive to community college. They all represented someone's livelihood, someone's dreams. A familiar rumble outside announced the arrival of their first customer of the day. Through the open garage door, Marcus watched Joe Miller's rusted pickup truck limp into the lot, smoke curling from under the hood in an ominous grey ribbon. "Speaking of charging what you're worth," Emma muttered, but she was already reaching for her toolbox. Despite her protests about his business practices, she loved the work as much as he did. Marcus grabbed his diagnostic tablet, the one luxury he'd allowed himself in recent years, and headed out to meet Joe. The farmer's weathered face showed the same worry Marcus had seen too often lately, the fear of a repair bill that could break an already strained budget. "She's running rough again," Joe said by way of greeting, patting the truck's hood like an old horse. I know you just fixed her last month, but let's take a look. Marcus cut in kindly, already popping the hood. He didn't mention that he'd only charged Joe for parts last time, or that he'd been doing the same for half his customers this past year. The garage might be struggling, but he still slept better, knowing he'd helped his neighbors keep their lives running. Emma appeared at his elbow with the toolbox, her quick eyes already assessing the engine. "Injectors again?" she asked, reaching for the diagnostic port. "Good catch," Marcus nodded, pride momentarily overwhelming his financial worries. "Why, don't you take point on this one?" As he watched his daughter work, confidently explaining each step to Joe, Marcus felt a familiar mix of joy and concern. Emma deserved college, deserved a shot at the engineering career she dreamed of, but with the garage's income barely covering their basic needs, he couldn't see how to make that happen. The morning continued in its familiar rhythm. More customers, more repairs, more payments that didn't quite cover the work performed. By noon, Marcus had fixed 3 cars, given 2 free diagnostic checks, and added another name to his mental list of people who would pay when things got better. What he didn't know was that fate was about to roll into his garage on 4 Italian tires, bringing with it a chance that would change everything, if only he was brave enough to take it. The Ferrari arrived like a fallen star, its pristine Rosso Corsa paint dulled by a layer of road dust, strapped to a flatbed truck that seemed almost apologetic about its cargo silence. Marcus was elbow-deep in a transmission repair when he heard Emma's sharp intake of breath from the garage entrance. "Dad," she whispered, reverence in her voice. "That's an F40. The truck driver, a weathered man in his 60s, climbed down from his cab, clutching a leather-bound maintenance logbook. "You Marcus Townsend?" Before Marcus could answer, the click of heels on concrete announced another arrival. Victoria Sterling emerged from a black Mercedes that had pulled in behind the flatbed, her presence as commanding as the Ferrari's. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent, but it was her eyes that caught his attention, sharp, analytical, and currently fixed on him with an intensity that made him want to check his shirt for grease stains. "Mr. Townsend," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovations. I understand you're something of a miracle worker." Marcus wiped his hands carefully on a shop rag before shaking hers. "I just fix cars, Ms. Sterling." "That's not what I've heard." She gestured to the Ferrari. "This F40 has been to every premium shop in the tri-state area. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with it. The engine starts, runs for exactly 37 seconds, then dies every time." Emma had drifted closer to the flatbed, her eyes scanning the Ferrari's lines with the same focus she brought to her engineering projects. "Have they checked the fuel delivery system? These had unique pressure requirements." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. "They have, along with everything else." She turned back to Marcus. "Your reputation reached me through rather unusual channels. Apparently, you restored Judge Martinez's 1960 Aston Martin when every other mechanic had declared it beyond salvation." Marcus remembered that job, 3 weeks of late nights, custom fabricated parts, and solutions that would have made the original engineers either proud or horrified. "That was different. This is a challenge." Victoria's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm prepared to pay whatever you think is fair, but I need it running perfectly by the end of the week." "The end of the week?" Marcus exchanged a glance with Emma. "That's impossible. These cars are—" "Nothing is impossible, Mr. Townsend. That's what you told Judge Martinez, isn't it?" She pulled a business card from her jacket pocket. "I've heard all about your payment plans, your sliding scales for customers who can't afford market rates. Admirable, if financially unsound. Fix this car, and I might have a proposition that could solve those problems." The truck driver had been quietly unloading the Ferrari, its red form now gleaming under the garage lights. He handed Marcus the maintenance logbook, its pages filled with stamps from prestigious service centers and notes in multiple languages. Emma was already circling the car, her phone out, comparing something to an online reference. Dad, look at this. She pointed to a slight discoloration near one of the intake manifolds. Remember that weird issue with Mr. Peterson's Jaguar last year? Marcus did remember. It had been a similar problem, intermittent failure caused by a cascade of seemingly unrelated issues. He'd solved it by thinking outside the factory specifications, trusting his instincts and 30 years of experience. Victoria watched their exchange with interest. Your daughter seems quite knowledgeable. Emma's going to be an engineer, Marcus said automatically, then caught himself. If we can figure out the tuition. Something flickered in Victoria's expression, recognition perhaps, or calculation. Well then, Mr. Townsend, will you take the job? Marcus looked at the Ferrari, at his daughter's hopeful expression, at the stack of bills visible on his office desk through the window. The logical answer was no. This kind of pressure, this timeline, with a car this rare and complex, it was asking for failure. But then he thought about Emma's college applications scattered across their kitchen table, about the dreams she sketched in her engineering notebook late at night when she thought he was sleeping. Sometimes the biggest risks came disguised as impossibilities. We'll need to start right away, he said finally. And I'll want to do a complete diagnostic before I promise anything. Victoria's smile widened, becoming more genuine. I thought you might say that. I'll leave you to it. She turned to go, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Townsend, I'll be watching your progress closely. As her Mercedes pulled away, Emma was already pulling out the diagnostic equipment. We're going to need coffee, she said. Lots of coffee. Marcus picked up the maintenance logbook, its leather cover smooth with age and history. Whatever secrets this Ferrari held, whatever challenge Victoria Sterling was really presenting, he had a feeling their lives were about to change. He just hoped it would be for the better. Midnight found Marcus kneeling beside the Ferrari, his father's old toolbox open at his feet. The battered steel case held more than tools. It contained lessons learned over decades, passed from father to son in quiet moments just like this. His fingers found a custom-made wrench his father had fabricated for particularly stubborn Italian engines, its grip worn smooth by years of use. I thought I might find you still here. Emma's voice drifted from the doorway. She carried two thermoses, steam rising from their tops in the cool night air. Any breakthrough? Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. Maybe. Come look at this. Under the harsh workshop lights, the Ferrari's engine bay gleamed like a jewel box. Marcus had spent hours studying the maintenance logbook, tracing the car's history through service stamps and technicians' notes. Now, with Emma at his shoulder, he pointed to a seemingly innocent collection of wires and tubes. See how the fuel line curves here? It's factory standard, but your grandfather would have called it lazy engineering. He picked up the custom wrench. He always said the obvious solution usually isn't the right one. Emma settled cross-legged beside him, her own coffee forgotten. Like that Porsche last year, when everyone said it needed a new transmission, but you found the real problem in the control module. Exactly, Marcus smiled, remembering his father's voice. Cars talk to you, son. You just have to learn their language. He reached deeper, into the toolbox, past the standard wrenches and sockets, to the special tools his father had crafted over the years. Each one told a story of a problem solved, a challenge overcome. The Ferrari's engine ticked as it cooled, like a patient waiting to share its secrets. Marcus had already verified what the other mechanics had found. The engine would start, run, briefly, then die. But something about the way it failed nagged at him. The sound wasn't quite right. Hand me that diagnostic tablet, he said, reaching for another of his father's custom tools. I want to try something. Emma passed him the tablet, then leaned in closer. Wait, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Depends. Are you thinking about that weird pressure fluctuation we saw in the data? Marcus grinned as Emma's eyes lit up. Like him, she could read an engine's vital signs like a doctor reading a patient's chart. Together, they worked through the next hour in comfortable silence, broken only by occasional murmurs of, try this or look here. Emma's fresh perspective, combined with Marcus's experience in a familiar dance, one they'd perfected over years of working side by side. Around 2 in the morning, Emma straightened up suddenly. "Dad, what if it's not the fuel system at all? What if that's just a symptom?" Marcus looked up from where he was tracing a wire harness. "Go on." "Well, remember what you always say about Italian electronics of this era, how they're like temperamental artists." She grabbed the tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "Look at these voltage readings. They're within spec, but barely. What if—" She didn't finish her sentence, but she didn't need to. Marcus was already reaching for another of his father's special tools, this one designed to test electrical connections in tight spaces. His father had made it for a troublesome Lamborghini back in '85, and it had saved them countless hours since. Then, "Emma," he said slowly as the readings started making sense, "I think you just found our ghost in the machine." A soft sound from the garage doorway made them both look up. Victoria Sterling stood there, elegant despite the late hour, watching them work with an unreadable expression. How long she'd been there, Marcus couldn't tell. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, stepping into the light. "I was curious about your progress." Marcus straightened, suddenly aware of his grease-stained hands and rumpled shirt. "We might have found something, but I'll need to fabricate a special tool to verify it." Victoria's eyes fell on the old toolbox, then moved to Emma's excited face, taking in the easy rapport between father and daughter. Something in her expression softened slightly. "You know," she said, "when Judge Martinez told me about you, he said something interesting. He said you don't just fix cars, you understand them. I'm beginning to see what he meant." Emma beamed with pride, but Marcus felt a flutter of uncertainty. There was something in Victoria's tone, something that suggested this late-night visit wasn't just about checking on the Ferrari's repair. He looked down at his father's toolbox, at the specialized instruments that represented generations of problem-solving. Whatever game Victoria Sterling was playing, he had a feeling they were about to move into the next round. Victoria Sterling had built her empire by reading people as precisely as Marcus read engines. Now, seated in a corner of his garage, her Mont Blanc pen moving across the pages of her worn leather notebook, she found herself documenting something unexpected. 3:47 a.m. Subject demonstrates unprecedented approach to diagnostic process. Integration of intuitive and analytical methods suggests unique problem-solving framework. Note, daughter's contribution significant. Possible hereditary component to mechanical aptitude. She paused, watching Marcus and Emma work. They moved around each other with the synchronization of dancers, anticipating each other's needs without words. It was nothing like the sterile efficiency of her company's R&D department, where engineers in pristine lab coats worked under fluorescent lights with state-of-the-art equipment. This was different, raw, real. "Coffee?" Emma's voice startled her from her observations. The teenager held out a fresh cup, steam rising in the pre-dawn air. Victoria accepted it, noting the chipped mug's NASA logo. "You're interested in aerospace engineering?" "Among other things." Emma's eyes drifted to the notebook. "Are you taking notes on us?" Before Victoria could respond, a triumphant sound from Marcus drew their attention. He emerged from under the Ferrari's hood, holding what looked like a twisted piece of metal. "Found it. Emma, remember what you said about the voltage readings?" Victoria watched as father and daughter bent over the component, their excitement palpable. She added another note. "Collaborative problem-solving exemplary, potential applications for corporate team structure." "The previous mechanics were looking at it wrong," Marcus explained, more to Emma than to Victoria. "They saw the symptoms, but missed the cause. This connector's degradation was creating a cascade effect through the electrical system." Victoria stood, moving closer. "But surely their diagnostic equipment would have caught that." Marcus smiled, and for the first time, Victoria noticed how it transformed his whole face. "Sometimes machines lie, Miss Sterling. You have to trust your instincts as much as your instruments. Please, she found herself saying, call me Victoria. She watched him fabricate a replacement part using equipment that belonged in a museum, his movements precise despite the ancient tools. Her notebook filled with observations, but increasingly she found herself writing about things that had nothing to do with mechanical expertise. The way his hands moved with both strength and delicacy, how his eyes crinkled when Emma made a clever suggestion. The quiet confidence that had nothing to do with ego and everything to do with earned wisdom. You're not just here about the car, are you? Emma's question was soft but direct. Victoria met the teenager's knowing gaze. What makes you say that? The way you're watching us, like we're some kind of experiment. Emma's tone held no accusation, only curiosity. Plus, someone with your resources could have shipped this car to Ferrari's own restoration department. Smart girl. Victoria closed her notebook, considering her response. Let's just say I'm interested in more than just mechanical repairs. The business proposition you mentioned? Something like that. Victoria stood, brushing off her skirt. The sun would be rising soon, and she had an early board meeting. Your father has something rare, Emma. Something that can't be taught in engineering schools or corporate training programs. I know, Emma said simply, pride evident in her voice. As if on cue, Marcus called Emma over to help him test the newly fabricated part. Victoria watched them work, adding one final note to her notebook. Potential far exceeds initial projections. Risk assessment may need revision, personal factors requiring additional consideration. She gathered her things, quietly slipping out as the first rays of dawn painted the garage in shades of gold. In her car, she pulled out her phone, cancelling her morning meetings. Some things were more important than quarterly reports and shareholder presentations. Besides, she had a feeling she was about to witness something extraordinary. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Emma pulled her engineering sketchbook from her backpack. The worn spiral notebook, its cover decorated with carefully drawn mechanical diagrams, held more than just homework. It contained dreams, sketched in precise technical detail. Dad, look at this. She flipped to a fresh page, pencil flying across paper. If we modify the connection point here, we could prevent the same issue from recurring. Her quick strokes evolved into a detailed technical drawing, complete with measurements and material specifications. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, coffee forgotten in his hand. That's actually brilliant. He turned to Victoria, who had returned after her brief departure. Emma's been designing custom solutions since she was 12. Remember that alternator bracket for the '67 Mustang? Emma blushed, but kept drawing. That was just a simple adaptation. That was innovation, Victoria said, moving closer to study the sketch. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in the elegant simplicity of Emma's design. This is remarkable work. Have you considered applying for engineering internships? A shadow crossed Emma's face. I've looked into some programs, but most of the good ones are either unpaid or require connections we don't have. Marcus finished quietly. Victoria pulled up a chair, her usual corporate reserve softening. May I? She gestured to Emma's sketchbook. As she flipped through the pages, her expression grew increasingly thoughtful. Each page revealed another invention, another solution to a complex mechanical problem, all rendered with professional precision. Here, Emma said, pointing to a particularly detailed drawing. This is a modification I designed for the diagnostic system we use. It helps detect subtle electrical fluctuations that most standard equipment misses. That's actually what gave me the idea about the Ferrari's problem. Marcus watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and protective concern. He'd seen Emma's talents dismissed before by those who couldn't see past her age or their circumstances. But Victoria was different. She studied each design with genuine interest, asking technical questions that revealed her own engineering background. These aren't just clever fixes, she said finally. These are innovations that could have significant commercial applications. Emma's eyes lit up. From her backpack, she pulled out another notebook, this one filled with even more ambitious projects. I've been working on this concept for an adaptive diagnostic system. It learns from each repair, building a database of unusual problems and solutions. Victoria's polished professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine excitement. Show me. For the next hour, the Ferrari sat forgotten as Emma walked them through her idea. She'd clearly spent countless nights developing it, combining artificial intelligence concepts with practical mechanical experience. Marcus watched in amazement as his daughter confidently answered Victoria's increasingly complex technical questions. The biggest challenge, Emma explained, sketching rapidly, is teaching the system to recognize the kind of intuitive problems Dad solves. It's not just about data, it's about pattern recognition across seemingly unrelated factors. Victoria nodded, her own corporate notes forgotten as she engaged with Emma's ideas. Have you considered incorporating machine learning algorithms? My company has been developing something similar for manufacturing diagnostics. Actually, yes. Emma flipped to another page covered in flowcharts and code snippets. I've been studying programming in my spare time. I think if we combine traditional diagnostic parameters with adaptive learning protocols, Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest as he watched them talk. Emma deserved this. Deserved to have her ideas taken seriously, to be mentored by someone who could open doors he couldn't. But the practical realities of their situation loomed large. As if reading his thoughts, Victoria turned to him. Marcus, do you realize what you have here? Your daughter isn't just good with cars. She's developing solutions that could revolutionize automotive diagnostics. I know, he said softly, but knowing something's valuable and being able to do something about it are different things. Victoria was quiet for a moment, studying them both. Then she pulled out her phone and pulled up a calendar. Emma, how would you feel about presenting some of these ideas to my engineering team? Emma's pencil clattered to the floor. What? We have a summer internship program. It's highly competitive, but Victoria smiled, a genuine warmth replacing her usual corporate polish. I think we might be able to make an exception for exceptional talent. Marcus started to protest. They couldn't afford to take time away from the garage, couldn't risk getting Emma's hopes up, but the look of pure joy on his daughter's face stopped him. First, Victoria held up a hand, we need to finish fixing this Ferrari. Consider it your practical entrance exam. She winked at Emma, though I'd say you're already passing with flying colors. Emma grabbed her sketchbook, energy renewed. Dad, let's try implementing my modification now. I think if we... As they turned back to the car, Marcus caught Victoria watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Whatever game she was playing, whatever her true motives were, she'd just given Emma something priceless, recognition of her potential, and for that he was willing to take whatever risks came next. The preliminary contract sat on Marcus's worn office desk like an alien artifact, its Sterling Innovations letterhead gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Victoria had placed it there with careful precision, her expression neutral but expectant. I don't understand, Marcus said, scanning the document's first page. A partnership? More specifically, a division of Sterling Innovations dedicated to specialized automotive restoration and diagnostic innovation. Victoria leaned against his desk, her corporate armor softened by 2 days of watching him work. With you as Chief Technical Officer and Lead Engineer. Marcus looked through the office window to where Emma was still working on the Ferrari, her movements confident and precise. Why me? You have entire departments of engineers with degrees from top universities. Because they can't do what you do. Victoria pulled out a chair and sat, her usual businesslike demeanor mixing with something more personal. In the past 48 hours, you've solved a problem that stumped some of the best mechanics in the country. But more importantly, you've shown me something that can't be taught in any university. She gestured to the garage, where various customers' cars sat in different stages of repair. You don't just fix machines, Marcus. You understand them. You see patterns others miss. And most importantly, you've passed that gift on to your daughter. The mention of Emma made Marcus's throat tight. The internship offer. Stand separately, Victoria said firmly. Emma's earned that on her own merit. This, she tapped. The contract, this is about building something bigger, something that could help both our worlds. Marcus picked up the contract, the paper heavy in his hands. The terms were generous, more than generous. A 6-figure salary, equity in the new division, complete technical autonomy. And buried in the middle, a clause about educational benefits for immediate family members. You've thought this through, he said quietly. Victoria smiled. I'm a CEO, Marcus. Planning ahead is what I do. She paused, then added more softly, but I'll admit, some aspects of this proposal evolved recently. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Marcus looked away first, his gaze returning to Emma. What exactly would this involve? Initially, setting up a state-of-the-art restoration facility, handpicking your team, developing standardized versions of your diagnostic methods. Victoria's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Emma's adaptive diagnostic system could be the cornerstone of a whole new approach to automotive maintenance. The scope of it made Marcus's head spin. And my customers here would have access to better facilities and resources than ever before. Victoria stood, moving to the window. I'm not asking you to abandon what you've built, Marcus. I'm offering you a chance to expand it, to help more people on a larger scale. Marcus joined her at the window. Outside, Emma was explaining something to Joe Miller, who had stopped by to check on his truck. The old farmer was nodding clearly, impressed by whatever solution she'd devised. There's one more thing, Victoria said, her voice softer. This isn't just about business for me anymore. These past 2 days, watching you and Emma work, I've seen something I thought had disappeared from the corporate world, something genuine, something real. Marcus turned to study her face, seeing past the polished exterior to something more vulnerable. Why does this matter so much to you? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Because 20 years ago, I was a lot like Emma, full of ideas, dreams, potential. But I didn't have anyone to open doors for me. I had to fight for every opportunity, sacrifice everything that didn't directly serve my goals. She smiled sadly. I succeeded, but sometimes I wonder about the cost. The honesty in her voice struck a chord in Marcus. He looked back at the contract, seeing it now not just as a business proposition, but as something more personal, a bridge between worlds. I'll need time to think about it, he said finally. Victoria nodded, gathering her belongings. Of course, but Marcus. She paused at the office door. Don't take too long. Some opportunities only come once in a lifetime. After she left, Marcus sat at his desk. The contract opened before him. Through the window, he could hear Emma's laughter mixing with the sound of tools against metal, the familiar symphony of their life together. Change was coming, one way or another. The question was whether he was brave enough to embrace it. The yellowed newspaper clipping trembled slightly in Marcus's hands as he sat alone in his office that evening. The headline still had the power to stop his breath. Local woman dies in highway accident. Mechanical failure suspected. Below it, Sarah's smile beamed from a grainy photograph forever frozen in time. He rarely allowed himself to look at it, keeping it tucked away in the same drawer as unpaid bills and deferred dreams. But Victoria's proposition had stirred up old memories, making him question decisions made in grief's long shadow. I thought I might find you here. Victoria's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, her corporate attire replaced by casual clothes that somehow made her seem more real. Her eyes fell to the newspaper clipping, and something in her expression shifted. I did my research, she said quietly, stepping into the office. About the accident. About the manufacturer's recall that came 2 months too late. Marcus carefully Folded the article, his fingers finding the well-worn creases. Is that why you chose me? Because of Sarah? No. Victoria sat in the chair across from him. But it helps me understand you better. She hesitated, then reached into her bag, pulling out a photograph of her own. We all have our ghosts, Marcus. The photo showed a much younger Victoria standing next to an older man in mechanic's coveralls, both beaming in front of a partially restored Chevrolet. My father, she explained. He had a shop about half the size of this one. Not as organized, but full of the same kind of magic. Marcus studied the photo, noting the pride in both their faces. What happened? Progress. The word carried years of bitterness. A developer bought the whole block, offered my father a fraction of what the business was worth. When he refused, she trailed off, her perfectly manicured nails digging slightly into the photo's edges. They found other ways to force him out. Zoning changes, health code violations, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that's why you went into business? Victoria's laugh held no humor. I went to business school with one goal, to never be powerless. Again, worked my way up, learned every trick, played their game better than they did. She gestured around the garage. But somewhere along the way, I lost what made my father's shop special. The human element, the soul. Emma's voice drifted in from the garage, humming while she worked on the Ferrari. The sound seemed to soften something in Victoria's face. When I saw you working with Emma, she continued, it reminded me of those days with my father. The joy of creation, the pride in doing something right, not just profitable. Marcus looked down at Sarah's article, then at Victoria's photo. After the accident, I almost gave up the garage. Couldn't bear to touch another engine, knowing what mechanical failure had cost me. What changed? Emma. A small smile touched his lips. She was 7. Trying to fix her bike chain with my tools, making a complete mess of it, but so determined, just like her mother. He met Victoria's eyes. Sometimes the only way past loss is to find a new purpose. Victoria nodded slowly. That's partly why I made the offer, not just because of your skill or Emma's potential, but because you've preserved something precious, something I want to help protect and grow, not corporate engineer into submission. Marcus leaned back, studying her. The polished CEO facade had cracked, revealing someone more complex, more human, someone who understood loss and redemption in ways he hadn't expected. Sarah used to say that every broken thing was just waiting for the right person to fix it, he said quietly. Not just machines, but people too. Victoria's eyes met his, holding a mix of vulnerability and hope that made his heart skip. And what do you say? Before he could answer, Emma appeared in the doorway, excitement written across her face. Dad, the Ferrari, it's running, not just for 30 seconds, but continuously. She paused, sensing the emotional weight in the room. Everything okay? Marcus looked at the newspaper clipping, at Victoria's photo, at his daughter's concerned face. 3 generations of dreams, losses, and possibilities, all converging in this moment. Yeah, sweetheart, he said, standing up. I think everything's going to be just fine. The Ferrari's keys dangled from a custom Sterling Innovations keychain, catching the early morning light. Victoria held them out to Marcus, a challenge and an invitation in her gesture. You did the impossible, she said. You should be the one to test it. Marcus looked at the F40, its Rosso Corsa paint gleaming after Emma's careful detailing. They'd worked through the night, fine-tuning every system, triple-checking every modification. Now, in the crisp dawn air, the car seemed to vibrate with potential. Actually, he said, surprising himself, I think Emma should take the first shift monitoring the diagnostics. She's the one who spotted the pattern. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Victoria smiled, producing a second set of keys. I thought you might say that. My car's equipped with diagnostic equipment. We can follow and monitor everything in real time. The next few minutes were a flurry of preparation. Emma set up her laptop, connecting it to the custom diagnostic system she'd helped design. She looked professional, confident, every inch the engineer she was meant to be. Marcus settled into the Ferrari's driver's seat, the leather cool against his back. The cockpit wrapped around him like a spacecraft, every gauge and switch precisely where it needed to be. Through the windshield, he could see Victoria's Mercedes pulling up alongside, Emma in the passenger seat with her equipment. "Ready when you are, Dad." Emma's voice crackled through the handheld radio they'd set up. Marcus took a deep breath and turned the key. The engine came to life with a sound that made his heart skip, not just running, but singing. Every cylinder fired in perfect harmony, the result of countless hours of careful adjustment and Emma's innovative solutions. All readings normal, Emma reported, professional excitement bleeding through her voice. Temperature, pressure, electrical systems, everything's perfect. Marcus eased the car forward, feeling it respond to the slightest touch. They'd arranged with local law enforcement to close off a stretch of road for testing, one of Victoria's many connections proving useful. As they approached the test route, he could feel the Ferrari wanting to run. "Remember," Victoria's voice joined Emma's on the radio, "we're just testing functionality. No need to—" The rest of her sentence was lost as Marcus opened up the throttle. The Ferrari leaped forward like a living thing, decades of Italian engineering and their recent modifications working in perfect concert. Through the radio, he heard Emma's delighted laugh and Victoria's surprised intake of breath. "Dad!" Emma's voice was pure joy. "These readings are incredible. The modification is working exactly like we predicted." Marcus guided the Ferrari through a series of curves, feeling how it responded. This wasn't just a repaired car, it was better than new. Emma's innovations had enhanced the original design while preserving its spirit. After the first run, they pulled over to check everything. Emma bounded out of Victoria's Mercedes, her laptop clutched to her chest, rattling off numbers and specifications. But Marcus was watching Victoria, who stood slightly apart, observing them with an expression that made his chest tight. "Want to experience it from the inside?" he asked her. Victoria startled slightly, then smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." As she settled into the passenger seat, Marcus caught Emma's knowing grin in the rearview mirror. His daughter made a show of checking something on her laptop, giving them a moment of privacy. "You know," Victoria said as they pulled away, "when I brought you this car, I thought I was just testing a theory about unconventional talent. And now?" She was quiet as they accelerated through the first curve, the Ferrari responding to Marcus's touch like it could read his mind. "Now I'm wondering if I found something I wasn't even looking for." The sun was fully up now, painting the road ahead in gold. In the Mercedes behind them, Emma was recording every metric of the Ferrari's performance, but the most important measurements weren't showing up on any diagnostic screen. They were in the way Victoria's hand found his on the gearshift, in the shared smile when they caught each other's eyes, in the perfect balance of trust and excitement as they flew down the empty road. When they finally returned to the garage, Emma was practically bouncing with enthusiasm. The modifications exceeded every projection. "Look at these performance curves." But Marcus was looking at Victoria, who held out the Sterling Innovations keychain. "Keep it," she said softly. "Consider it a down payment on our future collaboration." The word collaboration hung in the air, heavy with multiple meanings. Emma pretended to be absorbed in her data, but her smile gave her away. Marcus closed, his fingers around the keys, feeling the weight of them, the promise they represented. The Ferrari hadn't just been repaired, it had been transformed. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the only thing changing for the better. The anonymous email arrived on Victoria's phone during their celebratory lunch, its tone as cold as the restaurant's air conditioning. "The board has concerns about your recent investment decisions. Private meeting called for tomorrow. Recommend reconsidering current course of action." Victoria's expression didn't change as she read it, but Marcus had spent enough time watching her work on the Ferrari to recognize the subtle tension in her shoulders. She tucked the phone away, returning to her conversation with Emma about potential internship projects. but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly when Emma excused herself to the restroom. Victoria took a careful sip of water. "Politics," she said finally. "Not everyone at Sterling Innovations shares my vision for the future. The partnership, among other things." She met his eyes briefly, and he caught a glimpse of genuine worry before her. Corporate mask slipped back into place. "Nothing I can't handle." But later that afternoon, as Marcus worked on a routine oil change, he overheard Victoria in his office, her voice sharp with controlled anger. "I built this company from the ground up, Richard. No, this isn't about sentiment. The projected ROI on the diagnostic systems alone. Yes, I'm well aware of my fiduciary responsibilities." Emma appeared at his elbow, wiping her hands on a shop rag. "Sounds serious." "Sounds like trouble," Marcus corrected, thinking of the contract still sitting unsigned on his desk. "Mr. Townsend?" a voice called from the garage entrance. Marcus turned to find a man in an expensive suit, looking uncomfortably out of place among the tools and engine parts. "I'm Jeffrey Morton, from Sterling Innovations Legal Department. May we speak privately?" Victoria emerged from the office, her face darkening when she saw Morton. "What are you doing here, Jeff?" "Following up on some concerns, Victoria." Morton's smile was professionally blank. "Standard due diligence. Due diligence that couldn't wait for tomorrow's meeting." Morton ignored her, focusing on Marcus. "We're particularly interested in reviewing your business's financial records, and of course, any documentation regarding past incidents." The pointed emphasis made Marcus's stomach clench. They were looking for Sarah's accident report. "Get out." Victoria's voice was quiet but deadly. "You have no authority to conduct independent investigations. The board feels the board can address their concerns to me directly." Victoria stepped between Morton and Marcus. "Or have they forgotten who holds controlling interest?" Morton's smile tightened. "No one's forgotten anything, Victoria. That's rather the point." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Ms. Townsend's internship application? It's been flagged for additional review. Standard procedure, you understand." After he left, the garage felt colder somehow. Emma had gone very still, her hands clenched around her wrench. "They can't do that," Marcus said, but he wasn't sure. Who he was trying to convince. "The internship, Emma's opportunity, it's not fair." "No, it's not." Victoria's corporate mask had cracked, showing real anger underneath. "It's a warning shot. They're trying to pressure me through you." She turned to Emma. "I promise you, your internship is safe. I'll make sure of it. But the partnership..." Emma's voice was small. Victoria's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, her expression hardening. "They're calling an emergency board meeting. I have to go." She hesitated, then stepped closer to Marcus. "Whatever you hear, whatever they try, to tell you, trust that I'm handling it." After she left, Marcus found Emma staring at the Ferrari, its gleaming surface reflecting the afternoon sun. "Dad," she said quietly, "what are we going to do?" Marcus picked up a wrench, the familiar weight grounding him. "What we always do, sweetheart. We fix what's broken." But as he returned to work, he couldn't shake the feeling that some problems couldn't be solved with tools alone. The anonymous email on Victoria's phone had hinted at deeper complications, corporate currents, running counter to their carefully laid plans. Emma pulled out her engineering notebook, flipping through pages of designs and dreams. "Maybe if we could prove the diagnostic system's value, show them the test results from the Ferrari." Marcus watched his daughter, seeing Sarah's determination in the set of her jaw. They'd overcome technical challenges, pushed past personal barriers, found something precious and unexpected in the process. He wasn't about to let corporate politics take that away. But as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the garage, he couldn't help wondering, what would it cost Victoria to fight this battle? And more importantly, was he willing to let her pay that price? Marcus spent the night at his workbench, his father's lessons guiding his hands as he sketched detailed diagrams of the custom tools they'd developed for the Ferrari. Each drawing told a story of innovation born from necessity, of problems solved, through experience and intuition rather than corporate budgets. "You don't have to do this," Victoria said, appearing in the garage just before dawn. She looked tired but determined, her usual corporate armor showing signs of strain. "The board meeting. I can handle it alone." "No." Marcus handed her one of his drawings, the paper covered in precise technical details. "They want proof of value? Let's give them something they can't ignore." Emma emerged from the office, carrying her engineering notebook and a stack of diagnostic readouts. She'd stayed up all night too, compiling data and preparing their presentation. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her voice was steady. "I've analyzed the market potential," she announced, spreading papers across the workbench. "Based on current diagnostic system limitations and repair costs across luxury brands alone, our modified approach could save millions annually." Victoria picked up one of Marcus's drawings, studying the elegant simplicity of his solutions. "These aren't just repairs," she said softly. "This is art." "Engineering is art," Emma corrected, sounding so much like her mother that Marcus's chest tightened. "Dad taught me that." They spent the next 2 hours preparing, the garage transforming into a war room. Marcus's hand-drawn designs covered one wall, each one representing a problem solved, a limitation overcome. Emma's data analysis filled another, telling a story of innovation and potential profit that even the most hardened board member would have to consider. "Remember," Victoria coached as they gathered their materials, "they'll try to dismiss this as sentiment, as me being—" She hesitated, glancing at Marcus, distracted by personal factors. "We need to show them the business case." "No," Marcus said quietly. "We need to show them both." He pulled out one final drawing, different from the others. This one showed the Ferrari's engine, but rendered with an artist's touch. Each component, flowing into the next, the mechanical and the beautiful intertwined. At the bottom, in careful script, he'd written, "Some things can't be measured in quarterly reports." Victoria's breath caught. "Marcus—" "Dad," Emma interrupted, holding up her tablet. "Look at this." She'd overlaid his artistic rendering with technical specifications, creating a presentation that merged beauty with hard data. "We show them both, the art and the engineering, the heart and the numbers." Marcus looked at his daughter, brilliant, determined, so ready to take on the world, and then at Victoria, who'd risked so much already to believe in them. Something shifted in his chest, a decision crystallizing. "I have one more thing to add," he said, pulling out a folder he'd brought from home. Inside was the original newspaper article about Sarah's accident, but also something else, patent applications he'd never filed, innovations he'd developed over the years, but kept to himself. "Dad?" Emma's eyes widened as she recognized some of her own early inspirations in the drawings. "Your mother used to tell me I was too modest for my own good," he said, spreading the papers out. "Maybe it's time to prove her right." Victoria studied the patents, her business mind clearly calculating their potential. But when she looked up, her eyes held something deeper than professional interest. "The board meets in 2 hours," she said. "Are you sure about this? Once we start—" "I'm sure." Marcus gathered up his drawings, decades of expertise captured in ink and paper. "Emma, grab your laptop. Victoria—" He paused, finding courage in her steady gaze. "Lead the way." They packed everything into Victoria's Mercedes, the rising sun painting the garage in shades of possibility. As Marcus locked up, he caught his reflection in the Ferrari's polished surface. Not just a mechanic anymore, but maybe something more. Emma touched the car's hood gently. "For luck," she whispered. Victoria's hand found Marcus's as they walked to her car, a brief squeeze conveying everything words couldn't. They had technical brilliance in Emma's innovations, practical genius in Marcus's designs, and the power of Victoria's corporate experience. But more importantly, they had something the board might not expect: the strength of 3 people who'd found in each other something worth fighting for. As they pulled away from the garage, Marcus watched his life's work recede in the mirror. For 20 years, he'd played it safe, stayed small, protected what remained of his world after Sarah's death. But now, watching Emma review her presentation one last time, seeing Victoria's quiet confidence as she drove, he realized that sometimes the biggest risk was in not taking one at all. They had one shot to change everything. It was time to show the board and the world what happened when heart and innovation worked together. In the quiet of Victoria's executive office, waiting for the board to convene, Marcus found himself drawn to a letter lying partially exposed on her desk. The handwriting was Sarah's, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. "I found it in your files," Victoria said softly from behind him, "when the legal team was doing their due diligence. I was going to give it to you, but—" She hesitated. "Read it." With trembling fingers, Marcus unfolded the paper. The letter was dated just days before the accident. "My dearest Marcus, I know you're worried about expanding the garage, about taking risks when we have Emma to think about. But here's what I see. I see a man who can create magic with his hands, who teaches our daughter that dreams aren't just for fairy tales. Don't let fear of loss keep you from becoming everything you could be. Some dreams are worth the risk. All. My love, Sarah." "She knew you better than you know yourself," Victoria said quietly, moving to stand beside him. "Just like you know engines better than they know themselves." Marcus carefully refolded the letter. "How did you find it?" "The same way I found all your unfiled patents, your innovative repairs, your quiet brilliance." She turned to face him. "I didn't fall in love with just a mechanic, Marcus. I fell in love with a man who's been hiding his light under a bushel for far too long." The word love hung in the air between them, unexpected but somehow not surprising. Before Marcus could respond, Emma burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. "Dad! Victoria, I think I found something." She stopped short, reading the room. "Oh, should I come back?" Marcus held out Sarah's letter. "Come. Here, sweetheart, there's something you should read." As Emma read her mother's words, Victoria moved to the window overlooking the Sterling Innovations campus. "The board's assembling. We have about 20 minutes. Emma looked up from the letter, tears in her eyes but a smile on her face. "Mom would love this, you know, all of it, the Ferrari, the partnership." She glanced between Marcus and Victoria. "Everything." Marcus watched his daughter, seeing Sarah's strength in her bearing. "You're not upset about Victoria and me, Dad?" Emma's voice held the patient tone of a teenager explaining something obvious. "I've seen how you look at each other, how you work together. It's like—" She gestured to the technical drawings, spread across Victoria's desk. "It's like a perfectly tuned engine, all the parts working in harmony." Victoria turned from the window, her corporate mask softened by emotion. "Emma, I want you to know I'm not trying to replace your mother." "I know." Emma's smile was wise beyond her years. "You're writing a new chapter, not rewriting the old." "Uns." The intercom buzzed, making them all jump. "Miss Sterling, the board is ready." Victoria straightened, CEO mode engaging. But Marcus caught her hand. "Wait." He took a deep breath. "Before we go in there, I need you both to know something." He pulled out his father's old wrench, the one that had started his journey as a mechanic. "My dad used to say that tools are just extensions of the heart, that when you fix something, you put a piece of yourself into it." He looked at Victoria. "These past few days, I've put pieces of myself into that Ferrari, into this partnership, into us." Victoria finished softly. "The board may not understand that," he continued. "They'll see numbers, projections, risk assessments. But what we're building here, it's more than that." Emma stepped forward, placing her hand over their joined ones. "Then let's show them. All of it. The patents, the innovations, the dream." She grinned. "Mom always said, go big or go home, right?" Marcus laughed, pulling his daughter into a hug. When he looked at Victoria over Emma's head, he saw everything he needed to know in her eyes. "Miss Sterling," the intercom buzzed again, "the board is waiting." Victoria squared her shoulders, every inch the CEO, but her smile held warmth that hadn't been there weeks ago. "Well then," she said, gathering their presentation materials, "let's not keep them waiting. After all, some dreams are worth the risk." Marcus and Emma finished together, Sarah's words giving them strength. As they headed for the boardroom, Marcus felt the weight of the past lifting. Sarah's letter had given him permission to move forward, to embrace not just professional opportunities, but personal joy as well. Whatever happened in the next hour, they would face it together, a family forged in the heat of shared dreams and unexpected love. The manipulated financial report hit the boardroom's main screen like a digital thunderbolt. Richard Chen, head of Sterling's automotive division, stood with the confidence of a man delivering a killing blow. "As you can see," he said, gesturing, "to the damning numbers, Ms. Sterling's proposed investment would drain resources from proven revenue streams to fund what is essentially a vanity project inspired by a small-town mechanic and his teenage daughter." Victoria's hands tightened on the conference table, but her voice remained steady. "Those projections are based on incomplete data, Richard. If you'll allow Mr. Townsend to present our full analysis, I think we've seen enough amateur presentations today." Chen cut in smoothly. He clicked to the next slide, displaying a series of newspaper articles. Marcus's heart stopped when he saw Sarah's accident report among them, particularly from someone with such a complicated history with automotive failures. Emma half rose from her seat, but Marcus caught her arm. "Wait," he whispered. "The board has already been more than generous," Chen continued, listening to Ms. Sterling's passionate defense of this proposal. But passion, as we all know, can cloud judgment. His smile was shark-like as he turned to Victoria. "Perhaps recent personal entanglements have affected your usually impeccable business sense." The boardroom tensed at the implied accusation. Marcus watched Victoria, seeing the corporate mask strain under the attack. But before she could respond, Emma stood up. "May I speak?" Her voice was clear and confident, carrying Sarah's strength. Chen's patronizing smile widened. "Young lady, this is a board meeting, not a school presentation. Let her speak." The command came from an elderly woman at the far end of the table. Margaret Chen, Richard's mother and Sterling's majority shareholder, had been silent until now. She fixed her son with a steely gaze. "Some of us remember what it's like to be underestimated because of age or background." Emma didn't waste the opportunity. She moved to the presentation screen, plugging in her laptop with steady hands. "Mr. Chen's projections are based on traditional market models, but what we're proposing isn't traditional." The screen filled with her diagnostic data from the Ferrari, overlaid with Marcus's technical drawings. Every luxury car manufacturer faces the same challenge: complex systems that current diagnostic tools can't fully analyze. But what if, for the next 10 minutes, Emma commanded the room, presenting their innovation with a clarity that made even the most skeptical board members lean forward. She wove together Marcus's practical genius and Victoria's business acumen into a vision that was both revolutionary and achievable. "And yes," she said, meeting Richard Chen's eyes directly, "I am a teenager, and my father is a small-town mechanic. But he taught me that true innovation doesn't care about titles or corporate hierarchies. It cares about solving problems." She clicked to her final slide, a comparison of the Ferrari's performance before and after their modifications. "These aren't projections or promises. These are results, real, measurable, profitable results." Margaret Chen studied the numbers with experienced eyes. "Richard," she said quietly, "where did you get your financial projections?" Chen's confidence wavered slightly. "Our analytics team provided very different numbers in last week's preliminary report," Victoria interrupted, sliding tablets to each board member. "Numbers that support everything Emma just presented. Would you care to explain the discrepancy?" The manipulated report on the main screen suddenly seemed less damning and more damning evidence of a different kind. Chen's composure cracked. The automotive division cannot sustain a disruption of this magnitude. Your existing contracts are with companies that would kill for this technology, Emma pointed out. Companies that would pay premium prices for custom solutions. Companies that young lady's mother died trying to expose, Chen snapped, desperation making him cruel. Or did you think we wouldn't find the full accident report? The investigation she was conducting into systemic parts failures? The boardroom fell silent. Marcus felt the old grief rise up, but with it came something else, understanding. Sarah, he said slowly, was investigating parts failures. Before the accident, Victoria's eyes widened with sudden realization. She turned to her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. The timing. Chen, your division took over parts certification that same month. Margaret Chen stood, her authority filling the room. Richard, my office. Now. She turned to Victoria. It seems we have more to discuss than just a new partnership. Ms. Townsend, your presentation was excellent. Mr. Townsend, she smiled, slightly. I had a small-town mechanic for a husband. He would have loved your diagnostic innovations. As Richard Chen was led out, his career visibly crumbling, Marcus found himself holding both Emma's and Victoria's hands. The crisis wasn't over. There would be investigations, revelations, probably legal battles ahead. But in this moment, he felt only profound gratitude. Sarah's final investigation had laid the groundwork for this day, for this victory. She was still protecting them, still fighting for what was right, through the daughter who carried her spirit and the love that had brought them all together. The messages started arriving within hours of Richard Chen's downfall. First came the text from Joe Miller. Just heard what happened at Sterling. The whole town's behind you, Marcus, whatever you need. Then Mrs. Wilson called, Marcus, dear, I've told everyone about how you kept my old Volvo running when no one else would even try. They need to know what kind of man they're dealing with. Even Judge Martinez weighed in, his official letterhead landing on Marcus's desk. My restored Aston Martin stands as testament to Mr. Townsend's exceptional abilities. Any attempt to discredit his expertise is, frankly, laughable. Victoria found Marcus in his office, reading through the growing stack of supportive messages. Your community's quite impressive, she said softly. I've never seen anything like it. They're not just customers, Marcus replied, thinking of all the late-night repairs, the payment plans, the times he'd chosen kindness over profit. They're family. Emma burst in, her laptop clutched to her chest. Dad, Victoria, you need to see this. She opened her computer, revealing a local news website. The headline read, Small Town Innovation Meets Corporate Power, the story behind Sterling's shake-up. But it was the comment section that caught Marcus's eye. Hundreds of people sharing stories of his help over the years, of problems solved, of kindness shown, and mixed among them, industry professionals weighing in on the technical merits of their diagnostic system. It's not just local anymore, Emma explained, scrolling through the comments. Other mechanics, engineering forums, they're all talking about our presentation. Someone recorded it on their phone. Victoria smiled. Margaret. Chen did, actually. She thought it might be educational for the industry. A knock at the garage door interrupted them. Tommy, the young community college student, stood there with a group of his classmates. Mr. Townsend, we heard what happened. We thought maybe you could use some help organizing all the documentation for the investigation. Marcus looked at the young faces, eager to contribute, and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about him anymore, or even about Sarah's legacy. It was about community, about the power of people standing together. Actually, Victoria said, surprising them all, we could use help digitizing Mr. Townsend's design archives. Each innovation needs to be properly documented for the patent applications. Tommy's eyes lit up. We're on it. Professor Jenkins from the engineering department even offered to help validate the technical specifications. As the students set up their laptops, more visitors arrived, local business owners offering statements about Marcus's integrity, former customers sharing stories of repairs that had kept their businesses running, even competitors coming forward, with tales of Marcus helping them solve particularly difficult problems. "I never knew," Marcus said quietly to Victoria, watching the garage fill with supporters. "All these years, just doing what needed to be done. You were building something stronger than steel," she finished, taking his hand. "A foundation of trust and respect. That's what Richard Chen couldn't understand, what he tried to destroy." Emma, coordinating with the college students, looked up with a grin. "Dad, remember what you always say about engines? How every part has to work together," Marcus finished, smiling at the memory of teaching her that lesson. "The whole is greater than the sum of its parts." Victoria's phone buzzed with a message from Margaret Chen. "Board meeting tomorrow. Bring your full team. It's time to make this official." The news spread through the garage, bringing cheers and renewed determination. Tommy and his classmates dove deeper into the archives, exclaiming over each innovative solution they discovered. Local mechanics started calling in, offering their own experiences with Marcus's methods. As the sun set, casting long shadows through the garage, Marcus found himself standing between Victoria and Emma, watching their community rally around them. The Ferrari gleamed in the corner, a symbol of what they'd already accomplished together. "You know," Victoria said, her corporate armor completely gone now, replaced by genuine warmth, "when I brought you that car, I thought I was just solving a technical problem." "Instead?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. She squeezed his hand. "Instead, I found a family, a community, something worth fighting for." Emma hugged them both. "Mum would love this," she whispered. "All these people standing up for what's right, standing together." Marcus looked at his daughter, at the woman he was growing to love, at the community that had become his extended family. Sarah's letter had told him some dreams were worth the risk. Looking around the garage now, he realized she'd been right about so much more than that. They were stronger together. And tomorrow they would prove it. The security camera footage from 12 years ago played on the boardroom's main screen, its grainy quality doing nothing to diminish its impact. Sarah Townsend, looking so much like Emma did now, stood in Richard Chen's office, holding a file of documentation. Margaret Chen paused the playback, her face grave. "This was found in our archive security files, along with these." She gestured to the stack of documents her team had uncovered. Sarah Townsend wasn't just a random victim of mechanical failure. She was a whistleblower. Victoria stood at the podium, her professional composure masking deep anger. Sarah was a part-time consultant for several automotive companies. She discovered irregularities in parts certification, specifically in the division Richard had just taken over. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Sarah's frozen image. Even in the grainy footage, he could see the determination that had made him fall in love with her. Emma's hand found his, squeezing tight. "The investigation has revealed," Victoria continued, "that Richard Chen had been accepting bribes to certify substandard parts. When Sarah threatened to expose him," she paused, collecting herself. "The brake failure in her car wasn't an accident. It was deliberate sabotage." The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Margaret Chen raised her hand for silence. "Richard has been taken into custody. He's facing multiple charges, including corporate fraud and—" She met Marcus's eyes. "Involuntary manslaughter." Emma stood suddenly. "May I say something?" Margaret nodded, and Emma walked to the front of the room. She pulled out her mother's old engineering notebook, which they'd found buried in the garage. "Archives during yesterday's search. My mom documented everything," Emma said, her voice strong despite the emotion. "Not just the fraudulent certifications, but her own innovations, ideas for better testing protocols, safer design standards." She opened the notebook, The last entry, dated the day before she died, was about a new diagnostic system, one that could detect subtle manufacturing flaws before they became deadly. She looked up at the board members. Sound familiar? Because that's exactly what Dad and I have created. We didn't know it, but we've been finishing Mom's work all along. Victoria stepped forward, adding, "The diagnostic system that Marcus and Emma developed doesn't just represent innovative technology. It represents a commitment to safety and integrity that this company was founded on. A commitment that Richard Chen betrayed. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed years of bribes. Internal memos revealed systematic cover-ups of parts failures. And through it all, Sarah's meticulous documentation provided the framework that brought everything together. There will be legal proceedings," Margaret Chen announced. "Class action lawsuits from affected vehicle owners, regulatory investigations, but more importantly," she turned to Marcus and Emma, "there will be change. Real change." She stood, her authority filling the room. "I am officially announcing the establishment of the Sarah Townsend Safety Innovation Division at Sterling Innovations. With Marcus Townsend as Chief Technical Officer and Emma Townsend as our first engineering apprentice, pending her college education." Victoria unveiled the new division's logo on the screen, a perfect blend of technical precision and human care, with Sarah's signature equation for parts testing worked subtly into the design. "Mom's legacy," Emma whispered, touching the screen. "It's all coming full circle." Marcus stood, addressing the board for the first time. "Sarah used to say that every broken thing was just waiting for the right person to fix it. She believed in making things right, no matter the cost." He looked at Victoria, drawing strength from her presence. "This division won't just honor her memory, it'll carry forward her mission." The board's vote was unanimous. As people began filing out, Margaret Chen approached Marcus privately. "Your wife was a remarkable woman, Mr. Townsend. She helped us expose a cancer in our company at the cost of her own life. We can never fully repay that debt." "No," Marcus agreed, watching Emma excitedly discuss implementation plans with Victoria. "But we can make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." Later, in Victoria's office, the three of them sat together, processing the day's revelations. The Ferrari sat visible through the window, now more than ever a symbol of transformation and justice. "Dad," Emma said softly, "I found something else in Mum's notebook. A letter addressed to both of us." She pulled out a folded page, reading, "My dearest loves, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. But remember, the truth always finds its way to the light. Keep fixing what's broken, keep making things better, and most importantly, keep loving with your whole hearts." Victoria quietly wiped away a tear as Marcus pulled Emma close. Through the office window, they could see Tommy and his classmates already setting up workstations in the new division's space, eager to be part of this new chapter. Sarah's truth had finally emerged, and with it came not just justice, but a future brighter than any of them could have imagined. The architectural plans for the new restoration facility spread across Marcus's old workbench, the crisp blue lines a stark contrast to the well-worn surface. The design merged his practical wisdom with modern innovation. Traditional repair bays, alongside state-of-the-art diagnostic labs, classroom spaces next to specialized workshops. "What do you think?" Victoria asked, watching his face as he studied the plans. "We kept the essence of your garage, just expanded it a bit." "A bit?" Marcus chuckled, tracing the outline of what would become the Sarah Townsend Innovation Center. "This is bigger than my whole building." "But look here," Emma pointed excitedly. "The main workshop has the same layout you've always used, and we're keeping all your tools, just adding the new diagnostic equipment around them." She'd spent weeks helping the architects understand how her father worked, ensuring the new facility would enhance rather than replace his methods. Victoria smiled, wrapping an arm around Emma's shoulders. "Your daughter's quite the advocate. She insisted we preserve the soul of the place. The plans showed more than just a building. They showed a vision coming to life. Training areas where experienced mechanics could learn alongside engineering students, research labs where Emma's diagnostic systems could be developed and refined, and a community space where anyone with a passion for innovation could find support and guidance. "The construction team can start next week," Victoria said softly. "But first," she pulled out a small velvet box. "I thought we might want to make another kind of new beginning official." Marcus's heart skipped as she opened the box, revealing not just a ring, but a key. "The ring is optional," she said, her corporate confidence giving way to genuine vulnerability. "But the key is to our new home, if you both want it." Emma's eyes widened. "Both of us?" "Of course, both of you." Victoria looked between them. "We're a family now, or at least," she smiled at Marcus. "We could be." Marcus picked up the ring, simple and elegant like the woman offering it. "Sarah once told me that love isn't about replacing what's lost, but about building something new from what remains." He slipped the ring onto Victoria's finger. "I think she'd approve of what we're building." Emma hugged them both, then darted to the Ferrari, which still held a place of honor in the garage. "Does this mean I get to drive it someday?" "Let's focus on college first." Marcus laughed, but his heart swelled at how naturally they'd become a family. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Tommy and his classmates, now official interns, helped pack up the old garage while Victoria's team began moving in the new equipment. Each box of tools, each worn manual, each piece of Marcus's history was carefully preserved, even as they made room for the future. Joe Miller stopped by with his truck, now running perfectly, thanks to Emma's diagnostic innovations. "Heard about the engagement," he said, helping to move some equipment. "About time, if you ask me, though I hope you'll still have time to help us regular folks with our regular problems." "That's the whole point," Marcus assured him, showing him the plans. "We're expanding what we do, not changing who we are." Victoria, who'd overheard, added, "The community program is actually our priority. Every major innovation we develop will have practical applications for everyday repairs." As the sun set, they stood together in the old garage one last time. Tomorrow, construction would begin on the new facility. Tomorrow, their vision would start becoming reality. But tonight was for remembering, for appreciating the journey that had brought them here. Emma found an old photo album in one of the boxes, opening it to reveal pictures of the garage's early days. "Look, Dad, that's you and Mom when you first opened." Marcus and Victoria looked at the photo of young Marcus and Sarah standing proudly in front of their tiny garage. "We had such big dreams," Marcus said softly. "And now they're coming true," Victoria replied, "just in a different way than you expected." Emma carefully placed the album in a box marked Display Items, Innovation, Center Museum. They decided to include a historical exhibit in the new facility, honoring the garage's origins and Sarah's legacy while celebrating its future. As they locked up for the night, the Ferrari's polish caught the last rays of sunlight, throwing rainbows across the walls. Tomorrow would bring changes, challenges, new beginnings. But tonight, standing with his new family in the place where everything had started, Marcus felt nothing but gratitude. They had found something precious in the midst of change, a way to honor the past while embracing the future, to preserve what mattered while building something new, together. The framed photograph dominated the entrance of the Sarah Townsend Innovation Center. Marcus, Emma, and Victoria standing proudly beside the restored Ferrari F40, their faces reflecting both achievement and joy. Below it, a simple plaque read, "Where traditional wisdom meets modern innovation." 1 year had passed since construction began, and the center had become more than any of them had imagined. On this particular morning, Marcus stood in his new workshop, still organized exactly like his old garage, watching Emma demonstrate diagnostic techniques to a group of aspiring mechanics. "The computer can tell you what's wrong," she was explaining, her confidence grown over the past year of college and hands-on work. But Dad taught me that you have to listen to the engine too. It's about combining intuition with innovation. The students, a mix of traditional mechanics and engineering majors, crowded around as she pulled up data on their latest diagnostic system. Among them, Marcus recognized faces from local repair shops, young apprentices sent by their mentors, to learn the new methods while preserving the old skills. Everything we develop here goes through 3 phases, Emma continued, sounding so much like both her mothers, Sarah's technical precision and Victoria's business acumen blending in her voice. Traditional diagnosis, computer analysis, and then human verification, because machines can fail, but experience rarely does. Victoria appeared at Marcus's side, slipping her hand into his. Their wedding rings caught the morning light. "She's amazing," she said softly. "Both Sarah and you would be so proud." "We all are," Marcus replied, watching his daughter field complex technical questions with ease. The past year had seen Emma flourish, balancing her college studies with practical work at the center. Her innovative diagnostic systems were already being adopted by manufacturers across the industry. The Ferrari, maintained in perfect condition, had become something of a mascot. They used it to test new diagnostic procedures, but more importantly, it stood as a symbol of what brought them together. Every student who came through their program heard its story, not just the technical details of its restoration, but the human story of how it helped create a family. Joe Miller's voice carried from the community service bay, where he was showing off his truck to some newcomers. "This place saved my farm, you know. Their payment plans, their innovative repairs, they understand it's about more than just fixing machines." The center had stayed true to Marcus's original vision. No one was turned away for lack of funds. The profitable corporate contracts and licensing deals from their diagnostic patents helped subsidize community service work. It was a balance that would have made Sarah proud. Tommy, now their head teaching assistant, while finishing his engineering degree, rushed up with excitement in his eyes. "Mr. Townsend, that modification Emma designed for vintage cars, we just got the patent approval." Victoria grinned. "That makes 12 patents this year. The board's thrilled, but more importantly," she gestured to the busy workshop floor, where knowledge and skills were being passed between generations. "This is what real success looks like." They'd created something unique, a space where corporate innovation and community service coexisted, where cutting-edge technology enhanced rather than replaced human expertise. The Sarah Townsend Safety Innovation Division had become a model for other companies, proving that profit and principle could work together. Marcus walked through the facility, noting how seamlessly the old and new had merged. His father's custom tools sat in cases alongside state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment. Sarah's engineering notebooks, digitized and expanded by Emma, had become the foundation for their teaching curriculum. Even his old coffee maker had found a place of honor in the break room, still brewing the same strong blend that had fueled countless late-night repairs. A group of executives from a major manufacturer was touring the facility, led by Margaret Chen herself. She'd become a strong advocate for their approach, helping to implement similar programs across the industry. As they passed, Marcus overheard her saying, "The genius isn't just in the technology, it's in the philosophy behind it." Later that afternoon, as the sun painted the workshop in familiar golden hues, Marcus found Emma and Victoria in the archive room. They were adding a new photo to the wall, Emma's first patent certificate, displayed alongside Sarah's original safety proposals. "Mum would love this," Emma said, stepping back to survey the wall. "Not just the innovations, but how we're helping people, how we've brought everything full circle." Victoria wrapped an arm around her stepdaughter. "She's still helping people. Through you. Through all of this." Marcus looked at his family, at the legacy they'd built together. The Ferrari gleamed through the window, still beautiful, still perfect, still reminding him of how love could appear in the most unexpected ways. "You know what Sarah used to say about broken things?" he asked, pulling them both close. Emma smiled. "That they're just waiting for the right person to fix them. And sometimes," Victoria added, "fixing them makes us whole too." The centre hummed with activity around them, students learning, mechanics working, innovations being born. They had created more than a business or a school. They had created a future where wisdom and progress walked hand in hand, where broken things and broken hearts could find healing together. Sarah's legacy lived on, not just in the building's name, but in every life they touched, every problem they solved, every dream they helped realize, and in the love that had brought them all together, making something beautiful from what was broken. On the morning of Emma's graduation, Marcus found himself in his old office, now a quiet corner of the Innovation Center. In his hands, he held a custom tool set he'd spent months crafting, each piece designed specifically for the kind of innovative work Emma had pioneered. The polished case bore an inscription, "To my daughter, who taught me that love is the greatest tool of all." Victoria found him there, already dressed for the ceremony. "Everything ready?" He nodded, running his fingers over the engraved tools. "Sarah gave me my father's tools when I opened the garage. Now you're passing on your own legacy," Victoria finished, understanding in her eyes. She held up Emma's graduation robe, the engineering honors cords draped carefully across it, and creating new traditions. The center was quiet this morning, closed for Emma's graduation, but evidence of their successful year was everywhere. Certificates of innovation lined the walls, alongside thank you letters from community members. The Ferrari, recently returned from a classic car show where Emma had presented their diagnostic systems, sat gleaming in its special display area. "Ready?" Victoria asked softly. Marcus stood, tool set in hand. "Almost." He walked to Sarah's memorial corner, where her photograph smiled next to the latest Safety Innovation Awards. "We did it, honey," he whispered. "She became everything you dreamed and more." The graduation ceremony itself was a blur of pride and emotion. Emma's valedictorian speech touched on themes that brought tears to many eyes. The power of combining old wisdom with new ideas, the importance of community, the strength found in family, both born and chosen. "Innovation isn't just about creating something new," she said, her voice strong and clear. "It's about understanding what's valuable in what came before. My father taught me that every problem has a solution if you're willing to look at it from all angles. My mother, my first mother, taught me through her legacy that principles are worth fighting for. And my second mother showed me that success means nothing if you don't use it to help others." After the ceremony, they gathered at the center for a celebration that brought together all the threads of their lives. Joe Miller parked his truck next to luxury cars belonging to corporate board members. Tommy, now accepted into a prestigious engineering graduate program, showed younger students around the facility. Margaret Chen chatted with local mechanics about implementing their community service program nationwide. Emma moved through the crowd in her graduation robe, accepting congratulations and sharing her excitement about the center's future projects. When she reached Marcus and Victoria, her eyes fell on the custom tool set. "Dad!" Her voice held a question. Marcus handed her the case. "Every great engineer needs the right tools." Emma opened it, her fingers tracing the inscription. Then she pulled out her own surprise, a small wrapped package. "I have something for both of you too." Inside was a framed photograph, Emma as a toddler in Sarah's arms, mixed with a recent photo of her with Victoria. The images blended artistically to show the continuity of love across time. The inscription read, "Family is the strongest foundation." Victoria wiped away tears as Marcus hugged them both. Around them, the celebration continued, but this moment felt private, sacred. Later, as the sun set, the three of them stood in the workshop that had started it all. Emma's new tools lay next to the old ones Marcus had inherited from his father. 3 generations of innovation merged with 3 generations of love. "You know," Emma said. The Ferrari wasn't just a car we fixed. It was the vehicle that brought us all together. She smiled at Victoria. That first night, when you watched Dad work, you weren't just evaluating his skills, were you? Victoria laughed softly. I was discovering what real innovation looks like, what real love looks like. Marcus looked at his family. The daughter who carried Sarah's spirit and her own brilliant light, the woman who had helped him find love again, the legacy they'd built together. Above them, the center's motto caught the evening light. Where tradition meets tomorrow. Mom used to say every broken thing was waiting for the right person to fix it, Emma mused, running her fingers over her new tools. I think sometimes the right person needs fixing too, and sometimes it takes a whole family to do it. Victoria squeezed Marcus's hand, and sometimes what looks like an ending is really just a beginning. Marcus finished, watching the future unfold before them, bright with promise and possibility. The Ferrari's keys hung on their special hook, the Sterling Innovations keychain catching the last rays of sun. They had come full circle, healing what was broken, building something new, creating a legacy that would touch lives for generations to come. And somewhere, Marcus knew, Sarah was smiling.